Most artists think more sharpness means more realism, and that's where things go wrong. Today I'll show you how to build focus gradually from soft blurry fingers to crisp details, without overworking your drawing. Okay, so let's start with the blurry fingers, and this one is the most blurry in the reference. To get that soft look, you can first go over the darker details you added earlier using a blending stump. Keep your hand relaxed and blend using small circular motions so the graphite melts into the base instead of sitting on top. You can use tiny back and forth strokes too, but keep the pressure very low because blending stumps darken fast. Beginners often make this mistake of pressing harder with the stump because it feels like nothing is happening, which ends up pushing too much graphite into the paper and making the area look muddy. Instead, you can slow your hand down and let the stump gently move the graphite, almost like you're spreading butter on warm toast instead of scraping it off a frozen slice. Always blend the darker areas first and then lightly pass over the lighter portions, so everything stays even. Avoid over blending here because too much blending removes the natural texture and makes the finger look flat. Stop as soon as the surface looks soft and smooth, and leave a little texture behind because we still need it later for wrinkles. And if the finger accidentally gets too dark, you can gently lift graphite with a kneaded eraser using light dabs instead of rubbing. Now for highlights, shape your kneaded eraser into a thin tip and gently dab the lighter portions between the folds. This adds soft roundness without making anything sharp. Keep kneading the eraser often because beginners sometimes forget to clean it and then wonder why it stops lifting graphite and starts stamping it back like a dirty sponge. When you're adding highlights on elderly skin, always go only over the lighter portions you already defined earlier and avoid touching the darker folds. You can start dabbing a little more in the center of each lighter section because that's where the skin catches the most light. As you move towards the edges of that highlight, slowly reduce the pressure and the number of dabs, so the brightness fades naturally into the shadow. This small pressure change creates the feeling of a raised center, which instantly makes the fold look three-dimensional instead of flat. If the pinky or any area while working still feels dull, you can shade lightly with a 3B pencil using circular motions and blend again to build depth. You can also brighten a few spots with a sharp perfection eraser, but keep the pressure low so the finger stays blurry, just like the way I'm doing here. Think of the pinky like the background blur in a photo. You notice the shape and light, not the fine details. Before moving on, shade the background behind the pinky using graphite powder and a big dry brush. Then switch to a medium brush near the edges so you don't smudge the finger. Blend it with tissue paper, and if any powder dulls the pinky highlights, you can clean them up with a perfection eraser and redefine the edge with a 3B pencil. By the way, if you're a complete beginner and you keep throwing away your drawings because you feel like you just can't draw, it's not your fault. You just don't know the basics yet. And that's exactly why I made this full course, to help you go from shaky lines to realistic drawings step by step. It covers everything from basic lessons to advanced techniques, tips and tricks, all structured in a clear step-by-step format, so you don't have to guess your way through it. Thousands of students are already learning and growing through the course, and I put my course on sale for 5 days every month just for my YouTube family. Check the link in the description or comments to see if the sale is live right now, and get enrolled before it ends. The bottom portion of the pinky receives less light, so you can darken it using 3B with variable pressure. Blend it softly, then add tiny highlights directly with a perfection eraser, since the folds here are very small. For the nail, add a bright stroke on the left edge first, then flick downward while reducing pressure to create a soft highlight gradient. Now let's move to the ring finger. This one is still soft, but it's slightly clearer than the pinky. So we start tightening things up just a little. You can begin by redarkening the darker folds using a 3B pencil. Place the darker strokes in the center of each fold and then reduce pressure as you move outward so the shadows fade smoothly. Since the next finger casts a shadow here, you can increase pressure slightly in those shadowed areas and fade it out gently. It's the same logic as drawing under a table edge. The light just doesn't reach there properly. The bottom portion gets less light so it stays darker. And above the nail you can use a deeper tone and fade upward while adding curved strokes that follow the skin flow. Avoid heavy blending over the areas because it can kill the depth. Remember, blending here is like over-smoothing a clay sculpture until all the details disappear. Instead, you can lightly lock the graphite using my favorite graphite locking technique with H or 2H pencil, so it smooths out without losing contrast. Then blend the upper portion gently with a small stump only over the darker details, as it plays an important role in creating that blurry effect. For highlights, start with a kneaded eraser and dab softly in the lighter areas, focusing more in the center and less near the edges. If highlights bleed into shadows, you can bring the depth back with a blending stump, but only touch the shadow side and never scrub across the highlight. Beginners often panic here and start erasing everything again, which flattens the texture. Instead, think of it like fixing one wrong line in a sketch. You don't rub the whole page clean, you just correct the one stroke that's bothering you. Then refine a few spots using a perfection eraser to slightly increase clarity. But keep everything controlled so the finger doesn't jump into sharp focus yet. This is where a lot of artists hesitate, because the perfection eraser feels powerful, and it is. Use it like you'd use a sharp blade on a finished sculpture, only on the edges that need definition, not everywhere. If you overuse it, the ring finger will suddenly start competing with the middle finger for attention, and that breaks the depth order. But keep in mind that these brighter highlights should be more than the pinky finger to achieve that gradual focus thing. We're turning the focus knob slowly, not jumping settings. A small trick many artists don't talk about is to let some highlights stay imperfect. If every highlight is equally clean and bright, the skin starts looking artificial. Real elderly skin has uneven reflection. Some folds catch light cleanly, others barely glow. So it's completely okay if a few highlights look quieter. That unevenness is actually what makes the texture feel real. The lower portion of the finger has very soft yet thin highlights, so you can add these strokes gently and keep their length slightly different, because real skin never repeats itself perfectly, and uniform lines make it look artificial. If all strokes match, your brain immediately calls it fake. Add a few blended highlights using very light pressure so they melt into the shading instead of sitting on top, which helps the finger feel round and curved rather than flat. Since this finger is slightly less blurry than the pinky, you can add a few brighter highlights using a sharp mono-zero eraser, mainly around the knuckle area. But avoid adding too many or the finger will jump into sharp focus too early. And look how we've achieved this soft blurry texture in just a few simple steps. Now we move to the middle finger, and this is where the focus really starts. Blending becomes very limited from here onward. This is the moment your drawing stops being chill and starts asking for responsibility. You can use a 3B pencil with a chiseled tip, so you get both sharp strokes and soft shading without switching tools. Because nobody wants to juggle pencils like they're doing a magic trick. Use the sharp edge to darken the folds and the flat side to build gradients around them. Keep your pencil angle low so the base stays smooth. Beginners often keep the pencil too upright here, which creates patchy, harsh lines. Instead, you can lower the angle so more graphite touches the paper and everything blends naturally. When you reach the knuckle, slow down even more. Add one dark line following the curve, then softly fade it outward. Knuckles need patience. This is not the part you rush like the last 5 minutes of an exam. The lower part of the finger gets less light, so it should stay darker, but still smooth, not filled in all at once, because that's how fingers start looking dipped in charcoal. Once the shading feels right, lightly go over the whole finger with a 2H pencil using very low pressure. This locks the graphite in place and smooths everything without removing texture. Think of this step like saving your file before doing something risky. You guys always ask me why my drawings don't shine, and yours too, even when we're using the same graphite pencils. The reason is simple. I don't press too hard because once the paper turns shiny, it remembers that shine forever no matter what you do after to make it look matte. Okay, so you can use the same method on the index finger too, just with more control because it's the sharpest finger. When this base is done properly, adding highlights later feels easier. Once the depth is in place, this is the main highlighting stage. We will not blend this finger like the pinky or ring finger because we need the texture here to be sharp, so the end result looks focused and detailed. Instead, use a sharp mono zero eraser and place thin highlight strokes directly in the center of the lighter portions of the folds. Keep pressure higher for crisp highlights, then reduce pressure and add softer highlights with small circular motions. Basically, firm handshake first, gentle pat on the back after. To make the highlights look realistic, soften only one side of each highlight, so it has one sharp edge and one soft edge. That contrast is what makes the fold look lifted instead of drawn. Perfect symmetry here is how textures start looking like stickers. Now it's time to make these folds pop even more, and you can now add brighter and sharper highlights using an electric eraser. Beginners often make the mistake of adding too many bright dots with an electric eraser at this stage, which makes the skin look artificial and plastic. Instead, you can use these dots only as small accents along the edges of folds. If a highlight gets too wide, you can extend the shadow right beside it using a B pencil and then resharpen the highlight. And again, the bottom portion of this finger is also receiving very little light, so we'll keep the highlights minimal here as well. This time you can add them using a mono zero eraser so they stay focused and slightly sharper. Just a few controlled strokes are enough, because too many highlights in a dark area is like adding salt after the food already tastes fine. It doesn't improve it. It just becomes obvious. And look how focused this finger has started to look. Okay, so now let's move on to the index finger, and you can see the left side is quite bright and full of details. So to speed things up, you can lift graphite using a kneaded eraser. Shape it into a thin tip and start moving it gently over the lighter portions between the darker folds in small back and forth motions. And more highlights in the brighter areas because this finger naturally has stronger highlights. Focus on one wrinkle at a time, tap gently, then move on. Because fixing one fold is easy, fixing 5 at once is.
Emotional, damn it!
If the right side starts looking dull after highlights, just like mine has started to look, go back in with your 8B pencil and carefully darken the folds again using small circular motions and variable pressure. Keep your tip sharp but slightly rounded so you don't create harsh lines. This back and forth is normal in hyperrealism, so don't worry and go with the flow. You can also go over this graphite layer to lock it in using an H pencil, just like the way I'm doing here. Now it is time to add focused highlights using a sharp mono zero eraser. Place thin, crisp strokes right in the center of each lighter fold, where the light hits strongest. Then reduce pressure to soften one side so each highlight has one sharp edge and one soft edge. As you move towards the knuckle area, keep the highlights thinner and more controlled. The skin here is tighter, so thick strokes will instantly look wrong, like using a fat marker to sign a pencil sketch. Add short, slightly curved highlights right beside the darker folds. Then soften only the lower edge so the highlight blends naturally without losing sharpness. For the lower portion of the finger, again, very less light is reaching, so keep the highlights minimal and subtle. Add very thin strokes so they don't overpower the darker base. This area is on energy saving mode, not spotlight mode. Now it is time to learn how to add that extra sharpness. So you can add small dots with an electric eraser focused on the edges of folds. Keep the tip sharp, keep some dots bright and some soft, and don't overdo it because too many dots make the skin look artificial. You can also skip dots and just add brighter strokes on the left side of each fold if you prefer. Dots look strange up close but read beautifully from a normal viewing distance, so choose the method that feels comfortable. As you go down, mix dots with strokes because folds become thin. Press longer for brighter dots and tap lightly for softer ones. For the nail, add a cluster of bright dots for the chipped spot. Then reduce pressure and add softer dots below it to create the chipped effect. You can also add soft highlights without turning on the electric eraser, so it behaves like a normal eraser for gentle texture. Basically when you're too lazy to switch tools but still want clean results. So you just pretend the electric eraser is a mono zero eraser and move on. After adding these brighter dots, go back over the darker areas with a 3B pencil, using light circular motions to tame the edges so the dots blend into the texture instead of sitting on top. If you treat your drawing like a camera lens and control where things blur and where they sharpen, your realism improves instantly. Add a few final touches wherever something feels slightly off. Adjust a highlight here, deepen a fold there. And just like that, you've taken the texture from soft and blurry to sharp and focused, exactly the way elderly skin naturally transitions. And remember, the more you practice, the easier this gets. Once you train your eyes to see the drawing in layers instead of all at once, everything starts making sense. Also, I just launched the HR Studios Academy, so if you're an absolute beginner and want to learn drawing from scratch, you can join my course here for 90% off. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.